Canadians aren't getting enough sleep, with some doctors calling it a silent epidemic. Today, we're going to change that and break down why we're not sleeping, the magic number of how many hours you need, and why you should not hit that snooze button. Good morning, Dr. Colleen Carney. Good to see you.
Good morning.
You were with you're the director, actually, of the Sleep and Depression Clinic at Ryerson.
That's right.
Wow, you know, that's interesting that both of those are coupled together, sleep and depression.
Yeah. It's really important. There's a very clear link, for sure. We're investigating that right now.
What is the sleep epidemic?
I think the sleep epidemic is sort of on both ends. I think that on one hand, we have people who are not prioritizing sleep and having bad sleep habits and not getting to bed at a regular time. And on the other hand, we've got people who are pretty preoccupied with sleep and are spending too much time chasing sleep, and they develop insomnia.
Now, let's get right to the snooze button issue, shall we? Because we have a notorious snooze button pusher on our staff, Frank Ferragini. Nothing wrong with, you know, people need that snooze button. They just can't jump right out of bed. But you're saying the snooze button may actually be doing more harm than good.
Well, I think for many people, and particularly people with insomnia, what happens is they think they're spending a certain amount of time in bed each night, and they think, oh, I'm spending 8 hours in bed. But actually, they get tired and they go to bed a little bit early, and then they start hitting the snooze bar a couple of times. And what we find is adults can be spending like 9.5 hours in bed to get a 7-hour sleep, and that creates insomnia, and it actually sends a message to produce less deep sleep. And it underlies a lot of sleep problems, and it's something that, unless you're tracking your sleep, you have no idea you're doing.
So if you snooze, you do indeed lose. Hit the snooze button, that is.
It is
Tell
true.
me, how do we find out our own individual magic number? Because we do hear the Martha Stewarts of the world and the Red Foods of the world, who was just here, they only need 3 or 4, and they feel completely alert and functional.
Well, so if you do feel alert and functional, then it is possible that they are what we call a short sleeper. But that is very, very, very rare. Most people who say they're short sleepers actually are sleep restricting themselves, and they're prone to many different disorders. You know, Bill Clinton was a famous short sleeper, and that's associated with cardiovascular disease and all kinds of other, like dementia and all kinds of other problems. So I think to discover your what you're supposed to be getting is to spend some time monitoring your sleep, just with a sleep diary, and calculate the average amount of sleep that you're getting. And if it's around, say, 6 hours, and you feel alert and awake after 6 hours, and that's what you routinely produce, you may be a 6-hour sleeper. And it's not just genetic. There's a genetic part of it, but it's also environmental. If you're not very active, if you're getting a lot of light exposure, these things actually influence it. So you may be a 6-hour this year and a 7-hour next year and a 5.5 hour the next year. You really want to look to see what makes you feel refreshed. Getting night after night after night.
Yeah, so Thomas Edison, well, when he was inventing at the time, he would only get 10-minute sleeps. He would never have anything more than 10 minutes, only while he was inventing. He said it helped his creativity.
Right, and probably does.
Yeah.
So a lot of people who are very creative, but it's also associated with bipolar illness as well, and other illnesses. So I think you have to be careful about that. When we forego sleep for other purposes, we can expose ourselves to a lot of different risk factors.
Because you're going on adrenaline. So what is a sleep drive then?
Sleep drive is essentially what happens when you get up and you're active and you're out of bed. You build a chemical because your cells are working, a chemical called adenosine. And it builds up, and I sort of liken it to sort of filling up a balloon. And you want your balloon to be nice and big and taut right before you go to bed, because it's associated with sleepiness. And as soon as you let go of that balloon, the release of that is with deep sleep, growth hormone, tissue restoration. So it's really, really, really important. If you're inactive, or if you're tired and so you go to bed early, or if you hit the snooze button, you have less in that balloon. You're going to get less deep sleep. You may sleep for the same amount of time, but deep sleep is really what people want. One
of the worst times for a lot of people is falling asleep. And you're sitting and going, okay, now I have to go to sleep. Oh, I'm still not asleep yet. Look at that clock.
Think about your laundry list.
Oh my gosh.
Do tomorrow.
Yeah, and it's, I wonder if this is restful. I'm told that it's restful if you're not falling asleep, but oh my gosh. So what's happening in that time? How long should it take you to fall asleep? And what should you do if you don't fall asleep in that time?
So you should take somewhere between 15 and 30 minutes to fall asleep, which is surprising to some people. Some people think you should fall like 5-10 minutes.
Yeah, is it weird?
That's actually a problem.
As soon as you hit the pillow, I do within seconds. I'm out.
Yeah. So typically that is a bit of a problem. It means you're sleep deprived, and you probably should have a bigger dose
but
of
I'm
sleep.
sleeping 9 to 11 hours as it is.
Well, then We can talk later, Dean.
Oh, wow, I think we've uncovered yet another piece of the puzzle.
I'm like a mummy.
No, some people have just such a nice sleep routine that it's almost like classical conditioning, right? With Pavlov's dogs, where you just like pillow equals sleep and then fall asleep. But there's a lot of people with conditions like sleep apnea and periodic limb movement disorder, where they are sleep deprived and they don't know about it, and so they fall asleep like that. And we should not be falling asleep as soon as our head hits the pillow.
Really?
Really.
I thought that was a good thing.
So tell you what, I'm finding this absolutely fascinating, and sadly we have run out of time. I would like to hit Periscope right now and continue this conversation during this break, because I wanted to ask you again, what's happening at that time when you're lying in your bed and you're wishing you'd fall asleep? I also wanted to ask you about naps.
Sure.
Some people say you should only take 20-minute naps. I take 2-hour naps. So I want to talk about that. So I'm going to go into Periscope. It'll take me just about a minute to put that up, and we'll continue this conversation. I want to know the
answers right now.
All right, well, go to Periscope. We'll be back. Sleep Week continues here on Breakfast Television. Okay.
To nap or not to nap?
So just